Good afternoon, everyone. Kumar Dattatreyan here with Agile Meridian and the Meridian Point. And this episode is going to be focused on leadership and really what leadership's role is in removing bottlenecks that exist in every company, every organization, and what the true role of the CEO or the president or the main person in a company, what their role really is. And so we're going to explore that, Glenn Marshall and myself. So let me get him on stage here. And really the premise of this talk is, what if everyone in your organization thought like a CEO? What would that do to the company? How would that improve the way the company operates? What do you think, Glenn?
I think the way companies operate today leaves a lot to be desired. I think leadership, particularly CEO, is just overloaded. Everything has to go to them. The world's changing more quickly. I think a lot of them are struggling. They necessarily have to make decisions with imperfect information and quickly, and this is highly suboptimal. So when I heard this title, that really resonated with me. This way we can push down, and other people are talking about this, push down the decisions to where the data lives for speed and for effectiveness.
Yeah, it's really kind of, one of the things that we talk about in the disruptor method is that leadership bottlenecks limit organizational potential. And it's not because they're doing anything wrong necessarily. It's just the way organizations are structured, that the way leaders are rewarded, that it causes bottlenecks. And so we started to think about, well, how can we remove those bottlenecks? And it really starts with that transformational leader, right? The CEO, the president, whoever it is at the company, the head of the company. How do they need to change the way they lead, the way they operate, to empower and basically create a bunch of CEOs that are running around the company? That would do a lot to remove those bottlenecks.
Except it was everyone. So it's not just it's a bunch, it's the whole organization. I do want to add a point here. I've had discussions around this, and sometimes people say, "Oh, you need to be anarchy. Everybody running around doing everything and anything," but it's not. It's aligned to the CEO's objectives, so it's not a free for all. It's autonomy with alignment.
Autonomy with alignment. Yeah, that's something that Peter Merrill says quite a bit with in the X-Scale framework, right? So you want autonomy. You want to give people, you want to empower people to do their best thinking, to innovate, and all of that's good stuff. At the same time, you want them aligned to the goals for the company. And if you have alignment, then the autonomy can be really powerful.
Exactly.
If you have misalignment, then maybe not so much, right? You have a different set of problems. Bottlenecks of a different kind.
But the other thing from X-Scale and Agile is small cycles, small iterations. So it's not like you're going to go off somewhere for 6 months. You have to have these small cadence where you show stuff and collect feedback and course adjust. So it's actually not that dangerous. Delegation, alignment, and regular check-ins with guidance. So it's not dangerous at all.
I agree.
So there's kind of a mindset change here, Kumar. Could you talk a little bit about that? Traditionally, CEOs have been like a command center. It sounds like that model is going to have to change.
Yeah, I think for most modern companies, successful companies, there are a few exceptions, of course, where a command and control model absolutely is required. I think of Tesla in the 2017, 2016 timeframe, right before they launched the Model 3. Elon Musk had to sort of take charge and drive the troops, so to speak. But in most companies, that model doesn't work for very long. It's not very conducive to driving innovation and change. And so I really see we at the Agile Meridian and with the disruptor methods really see the modern CEO as more of a system architect rather than like running a command center. They need to be people that create the environments where decisions can be made at any level. It's changing the mindset from a CEO to be where, oh, I need to make all the decisions because I'm the one in charge, to how do I empower the people that are closest to the decisions? And it doesn't have to be the line worker, right? It just has to be the next line of people that you lead. It's the next set of the VPs and the AVPs and so on. How do I empower them to make the best decision that they need to make? And how do I empower them to do that to the people that they lead, and
Exactly.
on the chain, right? There's an example I'd like to use here. It was with a company called Denova. They're a consulting firm out of Colorado, and we installed this model, if you will, this leadership model with the president of the company, and through a leadership program and leadership development program. It was sort of the beginning of the disruptor method, if you will, with that client back in 2020, actually right after the pandemic. And they credit this work that we did together and the work that they did really in implementing this model, this leadership model, with helping them turn around their company and becoming wildly profitable, right? Because the president and the C-suite, if you will, implemented this model of shared ownership, shared leadership, allowing people that were closer to the decisions to make them, right? So autonomy with alignment, and it really paid dividends for them.
Absolutely. I'm not at all surprised at that. And think about it. The time it takes to make a decision just shrank. So, if nothing else, you're able to respond more quickly and get more work done. So, just looking at it from that perspective alone, it's going to increase profits. The other big thing is, what about staff engagement? Did they talk about that? How did the team respond when they were given this authority?
Yeah, I mean, I think that client, I don't quite remember. It's like 4 years ago, but all I remember is that they were a small company. There maybe 50 employees, and with maybe another 50 or so contractors. And since then, they've grown quite a bit. Another example that I might use is another client that we helped that grew EBITDA by 30% year over year for 3 years in a row since they started using the disruptor method. And it did result in much more engagement, not only from the people on the factory floor, and they're a manufacturing shop, this client I'm thinking about. And so it increased the engagement from people on the floor because, again, they were asked their opinion. It also improved the communication between silos, between departments and divisions, between engineering and sales, between sales and marketing. You might think that sales and marketing are so closely connected, they should be always talking. That is not the case in most companies. They have separate P&L, separate budgets, and they sort of fight tooth and nail for the dollars they get to be able to do their jobs. And so the role of the CEO is to align all these different people and have them start thinking about the company goals, not the sales goals, not the marketing goals, not the engineering goals, not whatever. It's what's best for the company, and have them start thinking like a CEO, which is what these patterns allow them to start experimenting with.
You brought up an interesting comment about P&L. It's very important to align the reward models and the practices with this, and having separate P&Ls for marketing and sales would seem to be introducing misalignment, for example.
Yeah, it sure does. I don't know to what extent the company I'm thinking about is BevCorp. Their testimonial is on our website. I don't know the full details because I wasn't the coach there, but I can certainly find out, and we can talk about that maybe in a future episodes as to how they did that. But I do know that they create a lot of alignment around the company goals. So the C-suite, from the president on down, they're all aligned, and all of her directs were aligned to the company goals. And so it created a real good synergy. And it seems like common sense that you'd want to do that, but most companies meet this way. The C-suite meets this way to talk about strategy once a year, and then after that year, they come up with their goals, and then they're off. And they get together maybe the third quarter, closer to the fourth quarter, to start planning their next year goals. but they haven't really reviewed the goals that they created 9 months ago, right? And so there's no accountability. There's no real measurement of how well they did along the year. And so that's something that they were able to change, and they were able to review these things on a cadence because they started meeting. They started meeting on a biweekly cadence,
Yep.
right? And so rather than meet for 3 days every year, they're meeting in short meetings every 2 weeks and staying aligned. It's not enough to just gain alignment in one moment and then assume that you're going to stay in alignment until the next time you meet a year from now. No, it doesn't work.
So I paraphrasing what you said, I think you've made a critical point. But what seems to be happening is you got them to dedicate a percentage of their capacity to this on an ongoing basis, rather than 3 days at the end of the year.
Correct. Yeah. So they were committing their time to work together as a leadership team. And team, the term team is thrown about quite a bit. We work together as a team, but and this group of people were considered a team before we came along. They thought they were a team, but they really weren't a team. They were a group of people aligned by a common purpose, but they had conflicting goals, right? And so what we were able to do and help them do is to think about what was common between this group of people. It was the company. That's what they were trying to promote. That's what they were trying to build. And from the president, CEO on down, we helped them craft a set of goals that they could all stand behind. It was a shared set of goals, right? And that's what sort of started and it was also to your point, the cadence by which they met. They met every 2 weeks to discuss where they were. We set up a Kanban system for them to help them track things that each department was working on. So there was visibility. One other thing about alignment, besides, when you talk about alignment with autonomy, with alignment you need also visibility and transparency to what people are working on. Because otherwise people can get misaligned real quick. Right. So say you're in a small group of people and you align, you're like, okay, these are our goals, and you don't meet for a quarter. People tend to do things that are in their own best interest. And so when you meet again, you may find yourself misaligned, and you have to really course correct quite hard to get back in alignment. And that's exacerbated by the fact that there's limited visibility to what each of the players, if you will, in this group are doing. And so visibility is another thing that we stress a lot, is that it's not just having autonomous teams that are aligned, it's also making sure that there's visibility and transparency so that people know what each other is working on. And you can self-correct if you need to, because, I'm going off course here a little bit. I need to self-correct.
I'd like to drill down to that a little bit. I think visibility is hugely important, but along with visibility comes prioritization. So many people are working on multiple things. You got to prioritize and focus. And for the things you're working on, you have to slice and limit the amount of work in progress. This is, of course, Kanban 101. But so many companies are working on so many different things that basically everything proceeds at a glacial pace. Whereas if they prioritized and sliced, they could focus, move things forward, and then reconsider the next highest priority item. I'd also like to go back to the command and control comment you made. I think you brought up an important point. There will be occasional emergencies where the CEO has to come in and get their hands dirty. The idea is not to take that off the table, but to limit it, and when you have to do it for as brief a time as possible. But there will be emergencies, and you will still have to do this. So the CEO does have that in their back pocket.
Right. I think that's important. It's an important thing to keep in mind. I mean, ideally, with a well-run organization, those times will be few and far between, right? Because the collective intelligence of the team, because hopefully this leadership team is now truly a team, the collective intelligence is greater than the one leader could possibly do, right? So I was reading an interesting article about ants last night, ant colonies, and how collectively, an ant colony is much smarter than an individual ant. They, in fact, develop this. They can solve problems better than human groups can. Although individual humans can solve the same problem much faster than an individual ant. So it's proof that ants, they have this sort of collective hive mind, if you will, that allows them to solve problems that humans aren't very good at and especially in large groups. The larger the group of humans, the less ability that group has to solve problems because, people are inherently in it for themselves, right? And it gets to a certain size where the team becomes untenable. And there's been a lot of research, 6 to 9 people, whatever that is. And at that level, if the team can craft a set of goals that are shared and they can start to bond with each other, establish trusting relationships with each other, the collective intelligence of that group is going to be more than the individual's intelligence in most cases. Maybe not as good as ants, but
Yep.
more than individual humans anyway.
The total is greater than the sum of the parts.
Yeah.
That comment you made about the ants is fascinating, Kumar. Please be sure and put a link for that in the notes in the video.
Will do.
That's a powerful thing that we need to keep in mind. Collective intelligence.
Yeah, I mean, it's the insect world is fascinating to me. Bees collectively are super smart. Individually, they're pretty smart too. But anyway, that's going down a rabbit hole. We want to stay on the transformative leader.
Okay, so I think we've talked about the attributes of a transformative leader. How do we actually go and build that?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So obviously, you have to have a leader that welcomes that kind of change, because it may be not something they're used to. And so what we do with the disruptor method, before we do anything, is conduct a sort of a personality assessment, not just on the CEO or the president, but the entire leadership team or whatever team is going to be going through that program. And the assessment is similar to DISC, if you're familiar with DISC, and it points out the strengths and areas of I wouldn't say they're weaknesses. It just points out the personality profile of individuals mapped in a model, a quadrant model that shows where these people are mostly gravitate to. Are they more command and control? Are they more analytical? Are they more, sort of team oriented and supportive? Or what is their makeup? And so what we want to see is sort of a team of people that is well-rounded from a personality profile perspective. And most often what we do see is that, when you have a bunch of leaders, you put them together and do a personality profile, they're sort of skewed to the command and control analytical side of the equation with not as many people in the more supportive and sort of coaching, team building type makeup. And so it doesn't mean that we fire everybody and get new people that fit the mold. No. But what it does do is highlight for these people where they need to focus. It doesn't mean that they can't do that. They just need to be made aware of what the personality profile of the team is as a group, so that people can say, oh, we are lacking in these skills and we need to do a little bit more team building, trust building, so that we can operate better as a team, right? And so we do that first, and that leads to a lot of education, if you will, as to the dynamics in that group and how they need to work with each other, how they need to deal with each other, how they deal with conflict, how they in what way will they be accountable to each other, right? And how will they agree on what the accountabilities are? So those are all really valuable conversations. And it starts with the leader, the CEO, the president, whoever it is, that says, hey, we need this. We want this because there are things in our organization that aren't working right. There are these leadership bottlenecks that exist that we want to fix, that I need to fix as a leader. I need to figure out how to fix it. I don't know how. So it takes a little bit of vulnerability, if you will, on the leader's part.
You said something interesting, and I've observed this in my clients as well, that leadership tends to orient towards command and control. So coming back to your vulnerability point, this is getting into an area that's not their strength. It is essential to go there, but we need to be compassionate and recognize that this is hard, and it's going to take courage to go into a new space for a lot of leadership.
Yeah, you're right. It is, and it doesn't work for every client that we work with, right? So I can think of one client where we didn't get in at the top; we got in the middle somewhere. So these are mostly people that are one or two levels, maybe two or three levels below the most senior levels in the company, in the organization. And so, the most senior person there is a VP, and this VP's peers, or maybe it's product management or VP of product management, people like that. And so, yes, it had an impact. It had an impact at that level and below, because we help them think about how to operate better as a team, and how to reduce the bottlenecks in getting products out to market. Really analyze what their product lifecycle was like, what the value stream was like, all of those things. So it had an impact. However, it didn't permeate up, right? Because these people didn't feel empowered enough to be able to coach up. And so it is important where you start.
Yeah.
Uh, and also it is also important the level of influence that the group that you work with has or hasn't, or they feel that they have or they haven't, right? And so in some cases it may provide a lift, but it's not going to resolve all of the leadership bottlenecks that exist, because again, unless you start at the top and build a thread from there down to the people that are doing the work. I don't want to say bottom, because everyone's important in an organization, right? The people that are on the factory floor all the way to the CEO of the company. And so if you're really going to develop a company where everyone thinks like you, it's got to be the CEO, the president, that starts this.
Yep. Yep. And you're at grave risk if you do not have senior leadership involvement of things regressing. Hopefully you're able to, if you're starting in the middle, you're able to go and engage them and show sufficient improvement that their boss will be saying, hey, how are you guys doing that? I want more of that. And that's your opportunity to take it up.
Exactly.
Your
That was the hope, but it doesn't always work, right? So you have to have the right engaged leader that has enough influence to be able to coach up if you're not getting in at the top.
Yep.
And if you are a CEO watching this, then it's really about, how do you cultivate the mindset, not just within the team that you lead or the company that you lead, but yourself. How do you cultivate that mindset where you are more coach, architect, system architect, if you will, of the organization, of the organizational culture, rather than I need to make the decisions because that's what I was brought here to do, right? And there is an element of that. It's a hard shift to make,
Yep.
But it's a valuable one.
It starts even with the coach. The coach has to walk the talk to the CEO, and the CEO has to walk the talk. And if you're not walking the talk, people are just going to see right through it and they go, yeah, sure. Yet another methodology, and it'll go nowhere. If I can just back up for a second, your comment around down to the bottom, I'd like to propose that we're pivoting more from a hierarchical structure to more of a network structure, where everybody's empowered. And there still are centers of control, of course. Somebody needs to sign off on the books, for example. But more and more it's really not so much hierarchical as it is a network.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. It doesn't happen overnight, though. I mean, in my experience, these things take time. Especially the larger the company, the more time it takes.
Yep.
And because there's HR to deal with, but you got to bring them into the fold, right? Legal has to be brought into the fold. Job descriptions need to be modified. And, sort of who reports to whom, that needs to be clear. Because in many organizations, that's really important. Who do you report to? And so all of those things are things to think about. But the mindset is the most important thing. And I think all of those things sort of pale in importance and become less important if the mindset is something that can be cultivated. Thinking like a CEO, being a transformative leader, right? No matter where you are in the organization, even if you're not a leader by title, but being able to think in that manner, being able to influence others in that manner becomes really more important, especially in today's world with the amount of change that we're going through with AI, the impact that it's having. I think being able to build relationships, trusting relationships with your peers, with your superiors, and the people that you lead is going to become even more important than it was.
I agree. Um, something that we also have to keep in mind when we're coaching is, we need to meet people where they are today and change at their rate, not where we are, at where they are, and that does require some humility and frankly patience,
Yeah.
because everybody's at a different spot, and everybody in the organization is different. Every team's different.
Yeah, I mean, you asked about prioritization, right? So the disruptor method, we do a lot of work to educate the whatever level the team is that we're working with, whether it's the C-suite or one or two levels below that, is to do some education around the business. So building business literacy across the organization, at least starting with the team that we're working with, and then helping utilize that team to spread the message, if you will, to their directs and so on. Right. We almost use the team as a bullhorn, if you will. Right. We multiply our influence and impact as coaches in the organization by using I don't want to say using by yeah, in a way using the voice of these leaders that are influential, that have a certain amount of gravitas and pull and respect in the organization to use their voices to educate people that are one level, two levels, three levels down as to the goals, the reason why the company is in existence, and what the goals are for that year, and how they can leverage the intelligence and the collective wisdom of the group, of the people that are doing the work in that company to achieve those goals. So it becomes really important to prioritize the right things, both from a customer standpoint. What are you building? For whom are you building it? And what impact is it going to have on the customer? What outcome is it going to provide for the customer? And what impact will it have on the business? Right? It's important to see both sides of the coin, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
Right? To say, this is how it's going to benefit our customers, and this is the impact we think it'll have on the business. And that way you can start to make some trade-off decisions as to what's most important to work on. And maybe even prioritize things that have a negative impact on the business. Maybe it's a loss leader for the company, but it's going to put your product in front of 1,000% more people over the next year. So.
And we see this all the time, where companies are disconnected from their customers. It's almost like they don't care. Of course they do care, but they're so caught up in other things. You absolutely have to focus on the customer, and then the money will follow.
Yeah. Go ahead.
I was looking at a couple of points we had earlier. You had mentioned directly responsible individuals. That is a powerful model. How does that fit in here? And do you want to talk a little bit about it?
Yeah, we kind of borrowed from from Xscale, the DRI model, a directly responsible individual. And so within the team, wherever we are able to provide our influence, is that the leader, the CEO, their responsibility is to decide the decider, and basically assign responsibility. Really, the people in that team are going to self-assign responsibility for the things that they just deem as most important for them to work on.
Mm-hmm.
Again, they're meeting every 2 weeks, their cadence is set. And so people own the items, they own it. And so even though they work as a team and they discuss these items that each of the members of the team are working on, somebody owns it. And so if the group collectively cannot reach a decision, then and they can't reach a consensus, I should say, it's not the CEO's responsibility to make excuse me, the decision. The CEO or the president merely says, all right, Glenn, I think that's your task. Since we can't reach an agreement, what is your recommendation? Where should we go? And Glenn, you would say, well, we need to go west. And unless there's a strong argument from the rest of the group, otherwise, where consensus can be reached, we're going to go west because it's your responsibility, right?
I'm a big fan of the DRI. There's another side to it, though. If in your example, I say west, and the team is adamant, no, not west, and they're unanimous that it's not west, they can overrule me as the DRI, but they have they have to be unanimous. No, they may go. We don't know where to go yet, but we know it's not west. To continue with your example, so that's powerful, and that keeps people focused because they know the DRI can override them if there's too much back and forth.
Yep, exactly. Well, Glenn, this is getting to be a 30-minute video, so I think maybe if there's one more question you want to ask, and then we can wrap it up.
This feels like a good break point. We've talked about the goals of the leader, and we've talked about how to build that mindset. So this kind of feels like a natural break point. There's more stuff to talk about, of course. This actually implementing it. I think that's a topic for our next session.
Yeah, that sounds good. Yeah, I mean, this is a big topic, right? So empowering your team to think like a CEO is not something that you can watch in 30 minutes and go do, but it's to give you some ideas on how you might do that. And of course, you're always free to contact us at Agile Meridian. Our details will be in the show notes for this episode, of course. But just think about how this might apply to you, and I'd love to hear your comments in the comment section on the various platforms that you will be seeing this video or hearing the podcast. So thank you for joining, and we'll see you next time. Thanks again. Bye-bye.